listening to the Jura Synchro podcast with Tiia and Ria.
Welcome to Jura Synchro podcast. Today we have a special guest from the United States, Sandra Johnson-Shakalov. She's also a physical therapist, assistant,
and the strength and conditioning coach for Skyliners.
Yeah. Welcome, Sandra. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me.
It's so nice to meet you. And today we want to talk about a little bit about the physical health, about injuries and how to prevent those.
Yes, this is a very interesting topic.
Yeah. But before we get started, we would like to know a little bit more about you. So what is your background with synchronized skating?
My background is long. I have been a synchronized skater for over 33 years, and I started when it was precision skating. So I have been around through that evolution, and I started as an 8-year-old and went through all the levels that don't exist now, and through collegiate, senior, and now adult divisions.
What team was it where you skated in seniors?
I skated for a program, and the team was called Team Esprit.
And you also have a background with cheerleading.
Yes, I was a cheerleader in high school, and then I was a professional cheerleader for the NFL, which was amazing.
Perfect. Yeah. So what about your education and your work experience? So as we said earlier, you're now the Skyliners strength and conditioning coach.
It started as a skater. I was having a lot of knee pain, and everywhere I went, they told me to quit. If I stopped skating, everything would be better. And at 15 years old, I couldn't imagine that being my future. That didn't seem like the right answer. So I started researching and learning for myself. And once I hit the college and university level, I decided to pursue strength and conditioning and physical therapy. And I wanted to directly turn around and bring that back to the sport that I love.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah, that sounds a good career path.
Yeah,
to learn from your own skating and want to bring back something from your experience as a physical therapist assistant.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, and we wrote earlier and with you and you having a master's degree in kinesiology. How did you come up with that degree?
I decided I'm still pursuing that. I'm in the middle of it as we speak. And because between working in physical therapy and strength and conditioning for the skaters, I wanted a higher level degree that would cover everything, that would help me with all of the pieces of my career.
So you help Skyliners with their strength and condition. How do you train with them?
Currently, we are training over Zoom since last April, and the teams have been resilient, and the coaches have given me as much autonomy as I have wanted. And so we have been training in small spaces with limited equipment, and we have been very creative and resourceful. And they have done a wonderful job adapting and learning. And it's given us an opportunity to talk more. It's interesting how there have been some positives out of how we've trained this last year. I feel like we were able to go so much deeper into flexibility training and foundational strength training to prevent injuries. It allowed us to work differently because previous seasons we were doing the strength and conditioning before on-ice training. And that was complicated because we couldn't have them be too tired.
So that's great that the COVID pandemic has given some good things to your training through Zoom.
Yeah. And new aspects. And what you said is very, very true because during our careers, it was always if we had something before on-ice training, we couldn't do basically our maximum because we had to have some power left for the ice training.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we used to work in a beautiful gym in Connecticut, and I had a couple of trainers that would help me so we could subdivide the team into groups into a circuit, and it was wonderful. But now we've had the opportunity to push further in terms of working them harder because we don't have to conserve energy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's great to hear. So, what are your favorite things to train with synchronized ice skating? Ice skaters.
I think it's specific strength, understanding what you need to execute a particular move or element, and getting creative to find out what is the best way. A spiral would require balance and edge control, flexibility and strength at what we call an end range. So when you break down a spiral, there's 4 or 5 pieces that have to be trained in their own right. And then you put that back together. So I love the adventure and the curiosity of trying to find the best way to give them exercises that are going to immediately turn around and show gains on the ice.
That sounds so great. Yeah. I wish we would have had a coach that would think the steps so clearly, because I think it's very important. And with the younger skaters, they don't understand. So it's much easier to do it step by step and then fulfill the spiral.
Yeah.
It does. It gives us an opportunity because a lot of times when we're learning a new element, the instruction is, grab your leg and pull it over your head. And that really defines a goal. And I like to talk with them about how do you do that? Where is the strength? What does the shoulder do? What does the back do? What does the hip do? How do you control your blade and your edge and your glide during these transitional movements? So I try to break it down the best that I can. So we are training in a smart fashion.
This sounds so wonderful and so inspiring, and I'm happy to hear that you're helping the Skyliners and skaters in general to do that, because it's very important. And I think you said a little bit what is your goal there, but what else with your work? How are you able to benefit the skaters as athletes?
I try to educate them to understand what is work, and when we have a red flag, when something is not feeling right. And sometimes with the juvenile, intermediate, younger teams, they'll say, something hurts. And I'm like, well, let's define that, because sometimes they don't know muscle soreness to muscle pain because they're such young athletes. So educating the skaters to understand their tool is their body. And as they develop and grow, we expand their vocabulary and we expand what we're feeling and what we're doing and our understanding. So I want them, again, they are going to manage and be their own advocate for their body and what they need as an athlete. So I want them to be smart and in touch and feel completely comfortable with asking questions.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, I'm so overwhelmed that some teams have this kind of coach with them. Yeah. Because I think this should be every synchronized ice skater's place.
Yeah, definitely.
Tiia, Ria, the podcast.
You said earlier that, for example, for spirals, you want to put it to pieces and go step by step. Do you in general think that with physical therapists or with your exercises, you're able to help the skaters with stretching, with different moves, with Bielmans or spread eagles?
Yeah, spread eagle. It's very hard for some skaters. So do you have some
tips for those?
So when you study anatomy, you'll learn some of the tricks, I guess you can say. And so starting with the spread eagle, starting with your knees bent in a bent fashion because it opens the hips more. So that's when you can find what your true range and flexibility is. And then as we straighten the knee, that's when we learn how to position and tuck and use our muscles properly to hold that position. So there are some introductory positions and stretches that will help you, such as with spirals. Sometimes we will focus on top leg only the extended leg. And other days we'll focus on the standing leg. And other times we work on, the hip and how these two pieces connect. So a lot of it is working through using knowledge of anatomy to really help the girls understand the how they get into a spiral or a spread or a Bielmann.
I think that usually you always think that if you don't go to the spread eagle, your hips are not
good enough for
the thing. So what opinion do you have for this?
There are some people and their structure where a spread eagle will be harder than others. And but I tell them, use what you have. Let's find the areas of your body that is open and how can we use that? Some people have beautiful turnout at the ankle. Some people it's at the hip. Some people will have good edge control and they're able to kind of drop back into their ankles. Everybody has a different style, and the style comes from what part of their body can move more easily. So I talk to the girls and we try to find out what that is. In previous seasons, we've done fitness testing or evaluation prior to the start of spring training. And with the spiral, it's not that I'm measuring for height. I'm looking for what area is stuck. I want to know what area they're having a restriction so we can open that up. It's not, as a trainer, it's not that I don't need to know what they do well. I need to know where they are struggling and where we need to put our time and work into. So that's what I try to focus on with them is what are we great at and what areas do we need to develop? And we try to pull them together because not every skater is the same. So the stretches and the corrections should not be the same for the entire class.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds so wonderful.
Yeah.
Do you have how often do you work with the skaters, and are you able to separate and give a certain skater different tasks or different exercises? Because I think during our times, everyone did the same thing.
Yeah.
And of course, as you said, for everyone, the same exercise doesn't do the same thing.
Mm.
It's when we were in person, I would subdivide the class, and anybody that had any knee or back or shoulder pain would tend to come with me. And then one of the trainers that worked with us, we would have a written out lesson plan for the day, the programming, and they would carry on with them. So I would take the girls that needed more instruction. That's how we did it in person. Online, I open the chat on Zoom and I tell them write in at any time if there's a complication, and they would do that. They got more comfortable with doing that. But being I've had some of these girls from juvenile going up the levels, I have learned so much about them, and they stay with the program for so many years that I know exactly when I need to make a change or modification for some of them, and I let them know. And so that's been something that's been very good to help with. The longevity of the skater in the program definitely makes it better.
Yeah. Mm. So in normal situation, how often would you work with the skaters?
So normally in previous seasons, it was once a week. And then this past year for, I'd say until spring training, until about September, we were going about twice a week. And being over Zoom gave me the opportunity that I would film their workout session. And I didn't film the girls, I filmed me. And I did every workout, every stretch. So I would film me and then post it for them so they could do it on their own other times throughout the week. And so hopefully a lot of them were able to take advantage of workouts they felt really made them stronger or really were suited to their needs, that they would repeat throughout the week. And the stretching videos, if I did a really good stretching video with junior or senior, I would post that into the other levels, into their group chat. So they were able to then, use that lesson as well.
So now that you have had a little bit more time with the skaters, have you seen better results?
Yes, yes, I have. And one of the biggest, I think, gauges of that I look for success is less injury, less people telling me that they have their knee is hurting or their back is hurting. That to me quantifies success, because if they cannot participate in skating, then I haven't done my job very well. So for me, if they can show up hard, then that is definitely good. And I love getting feedback from the coaches, that a group of girls that have been very consistent with their workouts, their spirals are looking better. So, and I always look to the coaches for feedback, because that's important.
What are the most common injuries a synchronized ice skater has?
Well, I think we have a couple, and it depends on the level and to the elements and skills that they're performing. But we do tend to get a lot of shoulder injury, and some of the different positions that we can have really require a large range of motion. So we do have some of those. When we started doing more complex lifts, you could see that there were some shoulder injuries. But we, again, altered the training to make sure people were ready, and that definitely reduced. We do have back injuries that happen. It's the Bielmann spirals. There's so much flexibility required, and it's a harder place to strengthen, particularly for the way that young girls stand. So that's something we've had to approach very carefully. It's very subtle and very consistent on how we strengthen the back. And then knees. We have a lot of knee issues because a lot of that is growing pains. It's very common for young female athletes between the ages of 12 and 15 to have a lot of knee pain, which you'll see in all sports. That one's very general to any sport. So, but again, it's strengthening correctly for that and realizing that when we have some pain or a flare-up with that we can still strengthen. It just has to be done differently. So I want to make sure, again, it comes back to being as strong as they possibly can.
Yeah. I think we can agree, not us, but I think our teammates have experienced pain in their back and also knee problems.
Mm-hmm. And I had growing pain in my knees when I was younger, so I have a little bit experience of that.
Yeah. So we can definitely agree.
Yes.
This is the Jura Synchro podcast.
So, how to prevent injuries?
So, I think the biggest thing that I've realized as I have a book, an encyclopedia of injury for myself, and I do think this past year showed me more than any other time consistency of strength training, consistency of flexibility training. Doing those things once a week we don't get the biggest benefit. And for flexibility, it can be harmful. It needs to be every day. And even if it's a little something every day, but that is the best way to avoid it. Your body is always ready. And so you can do something that all of a sudden, if a coach is like, we're doing Bielmann's today, and you're like, wow, I haven't stretched that in 3 weeks. That's going to be challenging. But if you've done some flexibility training 2 days ago, 4 days ago, you're like, okay, I'm going to do a quick little warm up and just introduce my body to some of the things it needs to do, and I'll be ready to go. So I would say consistency is definitely key.
Yeah, definitely. And now I'm thinking that if me and Tiia are going back to the ice rink and skate a little and we're trying to do a Bielmann, we had it when we were 5 years ago in Marigold. No way. It's not gonna happen now. So consistency is the right path.
Yeah.
So how do you support the athletes if they have an injury or after the injury? What do you do?
In their recovery process.
Yeah.
When an injury first comes about, the first thing I do is make sure that they understand what they should and should not do, that their parent and that the coach understands that sometimes we have to modify. It doesn't mean you have to sit out. We just have to modify and make sure their body is taken care of and not being challenged while it's trying to heal. So that's the first thing, is making sure everybody understands. And sometimes the girls will do independent therapy because they come from all over the United States to skate with the Skyliners. So a lot of times I speak with their parents, and I also have meetings with their physical therapists or their fitness trainers from where they are. So I try to approach this as a team. Every skater should have a team to support them, whether they're injured or not. That is by all means the best way for them to have their best performance. And once they have graduated from their therapy and they come back into class, I make sure that they understand that, just because they were doing something before, they haven't done it in a month. So we have to gradually ease them back into where they were. So I think the biggest thing is understanding that time is a factor, that we have to be patient, but we can definitely work hard. But if we're smart about this, hopefully we don't have that injury again.
Yeah, exactly. And I love how you're, from your speech, I can really understand that you're taking athletes as individuals. Mm-hmm. As we spoke earlier, it's very important to treat everyone as individuals, and even though they're injured, they can still do something, but you just need to modify their training. So
yeah,
it sounds
and I think
good.
It was great that you spoke that you have a team behind every skater, that you communicate with the doctors and the physiotherapists that they have. I think that's great.
Yeah,
and very important.
Yeah,
it helps as a clinician myself, because I can, it does help me reach out and communicate with them. And a lot of times skaters are afraid because they want to skate so badly. But when I watch them move, I'll see that they're doing something differently. So that's when I say, I will message them and be like, is this exercise okay for you? And so you get to know them well enough that when they're moving differently and they're compensating, and those are things. And I'm like, always tell me, sometimes on the ice, we have to do what we have to do. But in fitness, we can approach this so many different ways, and that'll get them to their goal, which is important. And say we have an ankle injury, we'll utilize a chair more to sit during certain things, but we can still work the hips, we can still work the core, we can still work the upper body. So there's so many things we can do where they can still be a part of the team, be a part of the fitness class. So, I try to keep them just mentally and psychologically engaged, because an injury can definitely bring you down, and it doesn't have to. And I want them to realize it's just a temporary, moment in their training that will pass. It doesn't have to be that devastating, and I don't want them to be brought down by it. I want them to realize everything they can still give.
Yeah. And we both have experienced some injuries. I had a stress fracture in my feet, and so during our last season, actually. So as you said, as an athlete, it feels like it's the end of the world, and but you would so much want to be on the ice, and
Yeah, and also I had a broken arm in my last season, but I tried to modify all the training still because my feet were working. And then I had hamstring sprain. Is it right?
Hamstring sprain.
Hamstring sprain. Is it right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have experience also from the injuries and recovering from them.
Yeah. And you said earlier about warming up for example, for a Bielman. But do you think that with warming up before exercise, you can prevent injuries?
I do think so. And I talk with the girls about the warm up before conditioning and the warm up before the ice and the quick at the boards warm up when you're about to do a spiral an hour into practice. So it's been a while since you've had this open range. So we talk about how to quickly do a locker room, stretch or warm up just in case. So we talked about the fact that sometimes we have to do something and they've just gotten off of a train, or they've just gotten off of a plane for traveling. And sometimes we have to make our warm up faster, but it still has to be safe and it has to be targeted. Not every warm up is great for every element that we're going to do. So it's important to, to be specific, and that leads to them being educated. And they can also work as a team. There are, the senior team in particular has many highly educated in the fitness field skaters on there. So it's great for them to have that resource within as well. And for the younger teams, I try to give them very simple warm-ups and say, this is a warm-up to do for this day, and this is a warm-up to do, pre-competition. And they do that in addition to, they have a warm-up dance, which I don't create it, but I do take a look at it to make sure that it fits well with their program of the year, because I want to make sure they're stretching things based on the current choreography as well.
Yeah. That sounds very great.
What about then recovering from exercise, cooling down? Do you think that is also important?
It's incredibly important. You want your body to return to the most peaceful state. If you did tons of flexibility, sometimes you want to finish with doing some squats. Show your body the regular form that it should be in, because sometimes stretching can be very extreme, or if you've had a very powerful practice and your legs are dead feeling, to have some good foam rolling and gentle stretching. If you've just done a couple of run-throughs, maybe your cool down should not have splits in it. That's not the right decision. So making sure that the cool down is reflective of the practice you just had is very important. And that's, again, teaching the girls to listen to their body. How do you feel? If you feel great, good, we can have a more general cool down. But if something feels a little bit off or a little bit too used and too tired, then again, we need to have a slightly different cool down to make sure that we are being gentle with our body.
That's true. I think it's very important to feel how your body feels and learn to do the right things after the practice.
Yeah.
I think that's something that we had in our skating careers.
That we listen to our bodies and yeah. All right. It has been so nice to talk with you, Sandra. I think we're so happy that you're helping with the Skyliners and the athletes. All you do sounds very good, and
I think every team should have a physical therapist assistant.
Yeah,
because these things that you told us today are something that I think every team would benefit.
Yeah,
I do think that one of the best experiences is because I was a skater. So knowing how things feel and how they move and blending that with a clinical and, exercise-based background help. And that would be the one thing that I would say to a lot of teams is if their trainer doesn't have a background in skating, watch videos, learn, and ask questions. I think that can definitely help, the training of a synchronized skater to go even further than it has.
So next we would have this quick this or that questions. So there is 5 questions, there is 2 options in each, and don't think too much, just choose either one of those. Are you ready?
Yes.
Brooklyn or Manhattan?
Brooklyn.
Squats or push-ups?
Squats.
Wheel or circle element?
Oh, wheel, definitely.
Active or still stretching?
Active.
Spiral or Bielmann?
Spiral.
Perfect.
Thank you, Sandra. The this or that went well.
Thank you so much. It was so pleasure to talk with you. I think we were so inspired.
Yes, and I hope our listeners were also inspired of all the info you gave us.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you all for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode where we had quite inspiring discussion with Sandra.
Yes. Hope to see you in the next episode.
Stay tuned.
Bye.
Bye.
Find out more Jura Synchro podcasts on your YouTube channel, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. The musical theme of this show was created by Scatmix.pro and Carl Hugo.